She was laughed at and told to play a broken piano as a joke until her fingers touched the keys and left the entire room speechless. Maria was the kind of woman people pass by every day without really noticing. She lived in a quiet neighborhood, in a small house with faded white walls and a tiny garden filled with sunflowers. She worked at the local grocery store, stocking shelves and helping customers find what they needed. Her voice was soft, her clothes were simple, and she always wore her gray sweater no matter the season. People thought of her as just an ordinary woman, maybe even a bit boring. She never talked much, never joined in gossip or loud conversations. She always smiled politely. But there was something about her that made people assume she didn't have anything special to offer. She spent her lunch break sitting alone on a bench at the park near her house, feeding the birds and watching children play. She would hum softly to herself, almost like she was remembering a tune no one else knew. Some of the younger staff at the grocery store would laugh behind her back, calling her Quiet Maria or Grandma music. They didn't mean to be cruel, but they just didn't understand her. One Saturday evening, the community center in town was hosting an open night. It was a casual event where people could sing, dance, tell jokes, or just come to watch. It wasn't anything fancy, just neighbors gathering together for fun. Maria had gone there not to perform, but to help set up chairs and serve snacks. She had done this before. She liked being useful without drawing attention. She wore her usual sweater, tied her graying hair into a neat bun, and quietly took her place near the back of the room with a tray of cookies in her hand. The community center's small stage, a few instruments set up, including an old upright piano pushed against the wall. The piano was in poor shape. Its paint was chipped, a few keys were missing their tops, and people said it was out of tune. It had been donated years ago and no one really used it anymore. But it still sat there like a forgotten piece of furniture, waiting for someone to remember it. That night, a group of teenagers were fooling around near the piano. They had been laughing and recording each other doing silly things for a social media challenge. One of them, a tall boy named Chris, had an idea. He turned to Maria and grinned. "Hey Maria," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "You ever play piano?" The room chuckled a little. Chris wasn't being mean, just trying to be funny. He thought it would be amusing to see the quiet lady try to make noise on the old broken instrument. Maria looked up, surprised that anyone was speaking to her like that. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, blinking, holding the tray of cookies like a shield. "Come on," another girl said, laughing. "Give us a song. Play something, Maria." More people started turning to look. It wasn't exactly cruel, but it was uncomfortable. Everyone was expecting a joke, something to laugh at. Maybe they thought she would press a few keys, make a funny sound, and then everyone would move on. Maria looked at the piano. Her eye stayed on it for a long moment. Then, without saying a word, she placed the tray on a nearby table and slowly walked across the room. Her steps were quiet, but they felt heavy, like she was walking through memories no one else could see. The crowd grew quieter, not out of respect, but out of curiosity. What was she going to do? She reached the piano and gently wiped the dust off the keys with her sleeve. Then she sat down on the worn-out bench. Her hands hovered over the keys. Trembling slightly, for a second she looked nervous, like she might change her mind. But then her fingers touched the keys and something shifted in the room. The first notes were soft, hesitant. A few of the keys made strange sounds, and the tuning was clearly off. But even through that, there was something different about the way Maria played. Her hands began to move faster, more confidently. The broken keys didn't matter. Her fingers seemed to know exactly where to go, like they had traveled this path many times before. The sound that came from the piano was not perfect. It wasn't the clean, polished sound of a concert grand piano. But the music was real. It was full of feeling, of memory, of something deeper than anyone in that room had expected. The laughter stopped. The chatter faded. One by one, people turned their heads and fell silent. The teenagers who had called her up were now staring with wide eyes. Chris lowered his phone without pressing record. Maria's eyes were closed as she played. Her body moved with the rhythm, gently swaying, as if the music was coming not just from the keys, but from somewhere inside her. She wasn't showing off. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply sharing a part of herself. That had been hidden for years. The melody she played was unfamiliar to most. It was a piece filled with both sadness and beauty, the kind of music that made your chest ache in a way you couldn't explain. It felt like the sound of remembering something long forgotten. People were frozen in place, unsure whether they should clap or cry. A woman near the front wiped tears from her eyes. A man in the back, who had been talking loudly earlier, now stood with his hands folded, staring at Maria like she was something magical. When the final note faded, Maria gently took her hands off the keys. She opened her eyes, looked at the piano, and gave it a small smile, as if thanking it for still working. Then she stood up and walked back toward the snack table, quietly picking up her tray of cookies. For a long second, no one moved. Then, all at once, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't polite. Clapping it was real, honest appreciation. People cheered. Some stood. Others looked at each other in disbelief. Maria didn't wave or bow. She just nodded shyly and continued. Passing out cookies as if nothing had happened, whispers began to spread through the crowd. Where did she learn to play like that? Why didn't we know? Who is she really? But Maria said nothing. She let the questions float in the air like the notes of her music, unanswered and beautiful. That night, people left the community center with a strange feeling in their hearts. They had come expecting jokes, food, and fun. But what they got was a quiet kind of wonder. A woman they had ignored for years had reminded them that greatness doesn't always come wrapped in flash and fame. Sometimes it hides in the most unexpected places, waiting for the right moment and the right broken piano to be heard. The room was still buzzing with surprise. After Maria's quiet performance, people kept looking at each other, wondering what they had just witnessed. The community center was full of people who had come for an evening of jokes, songs, and maybe some clumsy dancing. No one expected to be moved so deeply by someone like Maria, the woman they saw every day, but never really noticed. After she finished playing, Maria had gone back to serving snacks like nothing had happened. She offered cookies and drinks with her usual calm smile. Some people tried to talk to her, but she only nodded politely, as if she hadn't just done something incredible. The old upright piano sat quietly in the corner again, but now it felt different, like it had a story to tell. One of the teenagers who had teased Maria earlier, Chris, was still holding his phone. He had meant to record her performance for fun, but the music had caught him off guard. Instead of a silly video, he now had something powerful on his screen: Maria's hands moving across the broken keys. Her eyes closed, the room completely silent around her. Chris didn't laugh anymore. He didn't say a word. He just watched the video over and over, trying to understand what he had just seen. Another person in the crowd, a middle-aged woman named Sandra, sat quietly with tears in her eyes. She had played piano as a girl and had grown up listening to her grandmother play in church. The music Maria played reminded her of those childhood days, gentle, emotional, filled with warmth. She approached Maria and asked softly, "Where did you learn to play like that?" Maria only smiled. "It's just a little practice," she replied. But it was clear to everyone that it wasn't just a little practice. What she had played wasn't something a beginner could do. It was something filled with soul, shaped by years of learning and deep feeling. As the night went on, more people came up to Maria. Some wanted to thank her. Some were just curious. But Maria remained quiet, humble. She didn't want to talk about her past. She didn't seem interested in fame or praise. She was content with letting the music speak for her. Later that evening, someone suggested she play again. People had begun to whisper her name like it was something new, something special. "Maria, please," a woman asked, "just one more song?" Others joined in, clapping and cheering softly. At first, Maria shook her head. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. But after a moment, seeing the hope in their eyes, she walked back to the piano. This time the room was already silent before she sat down. There was no laughter or teasing, just quiet respect. Even the children sat still, waiting to hear what would happen next. Maria placed her fingers on the keys again, gently testing a few notes. The piano still sounded rough, some keys were sharp, others dull, but she didn't seem to mind. Fingers moved with grace and confidence, as if she had memorized every flaw and could work around them. Then she began to play. The piece was slower this time, almost like a lullaby. It was soft, but filled with emotion. Each note told a story of love, of loss, of quiet moments that most people forget. Her music seemed to pull everyone into a different world. Even though the piano was old and broken, the sounds she created were rich and full of life. Some people closed their eyes to listen better. Others stared at her hands, trying to understand how someone could make something so beautiful out of something so worn out. A man in the back whispered, "She's playing like it's the finest piano in the world." A boy sitting near the front, about 10 years old, leaned toward his mother. He whispered, "I didn't know a piano could make people cry." His mother wiped her eyes and nodded. Not all pianos can, but some people know how to make it speak. Maria played without stopping, her fingers dancing lightly, then pressing with strength. She played like someone who had once loved music deeply and maybe had lost it only to find it again tonight. It wasn't just music, it was like she was pouring her heart into every note. The people in the room weren't just listening to a melody, they were feeling something deep inside themselves. It was as if her music reached into places they didn't even know existed. When she finished, the room stayed silent for a few seconds. No one wanted the moment to end. Then, slowly, applause started. But it wasn't loud or wild. It was soft, respectful, and full of admiration. It was the kind of clapping people do when they've just seen something truly special, something that changed them. Maria stood up. Quietly, she gave a small bow, almost shy, then walked back to her corner. Someone tried to ask her about the song, where she had learned it, or whether she had written it herself. But she just smiled and said, "It's just an old tune." Something. I remember, as the crowd started to thin out and people began to leave, the conversations were all about her. Where did she come from? Why haven't we ever heard her play before? She must have studied somewhere, right? Nobody knew. And Maria wasn't offering answers. Chris, the teenager, finally posted the video online. He didn't add a funny caption. He didn't make jokes. He just wrote, "We thought it would be funny to ask her to play. We had no idea who she really was." By the next morning, the video had started to spread. At first, it was just people in town sharing it, neighbors, friends, people who had missed the event. Then it reached others, people who didn't know Maria but were touched by her music. I watched the video again and again, amazed by how someone so ordinary looking could play with such beauty. Maria didn't care about the internet or social media. She didn't even have a smartphone. She spent her Sunday like she always did, feeding birds at the park and reading an old book. But the world was beginning to wake up to her talent. Back at the community center, the broken piano became something. Special people took photos with it. They touched its keys gently, like it had become magical. Children asked their parents if they could learn to play. Teenagers who had laughed the night before now felt ashamed and inspired at the same time. Later, that week, the community center received a call from a woman who had seen the video online. She introduced herself as a retired piano teacher who once taught at a well-known music school. "The way that woman plays," she said, "it's not just talent, it's experience, it's love. I'd like to meet her." But Maria remained the same. She didn't seek attention. She didn't talk about her past. She still worked at the grocery store, still wore her old sweater, and still smiled kindly at every customer. What had changed was not Maria, but the way people saw her now. When people passed her in the street, they smiled first. They said hello. They asked questions about music. Children waved at her, calling her piano lady. Some customers even brought her flowers or small gifts at the store, and in their hearts, everyone remembered that night. The night a simple woman was asked to play a broken piano as a joke, but instead of becoming the punchline, she became the most unforgettable part of the evening. She reminded them that beauty can live quietly, that talent can hide in the plainest of people, and that sometimes All it takes is a broken piano and a brave moment to reveal something truly extraordinary. And Maria, the quiet woman from the grocery store, had done just that without saying a word, but with music that no one would ever forget. The morning after Maria's piano performance at the community center, something unusual happened in the small town. People who had never talked much about music were suddenly sharing a video. In the grocery store where Maria worked, customers whispered near the fruit section. Some stared at her from a distance, not rudely, but with new eyes. Something had changed. Chris's video, the one he had recorded while teasing Maria, was now spreading faster than anyone expected. In the video, Maria sat quietly at the old broken piano. Her simple clothes, gray sweater, and shy smile gave no clue to what was about to happen. But then, her fingers moved over the keys like they were telling a story, and the music filled the room with emotion. People on the internet were shocked. Who is she? Where did she learn to play like that? Why isn't she famous? These were just a few of the comments filling up under the post. The video was shared by thousands. Within hours, it was posted on music pages, talent discovery accounts, and even on a few international blogs that focused on inspiring stories. News channels started noticing it too. At first, it was just the local news, but then regional stations picked it up. A video titled "Simple Woman Stuns Everyone with Broken Piano" became one of the most watched clips of the week. Maria, however, didn't know any of this yet. She was living her usual life. That Monday, she arrived early at the grocery store like she always did. She put on her green apron, tied her hair back, and began arranging the new shipment of apples. Some of her co-workers stared at her with wide eyes. One of them, a young woman named Jenna, walked over, holding her phone. "Maria," she said carefully, "you're all over the internet." Maria looked up confused. "What do you mean?" "The video of you playing the piano," Jenna replied, smiling. "It's gone viral. You're famous." Maria blinked slowly. "I didn't think anyone would record that." Jenna laughed. "Everyone's talking about how amazing you are. There's even a reporter outside asking to speak to you." Maria didn't like attention. Her hands, which moved so confidently on the piano, now trembled slightly as she took off her apron. She walked to the break room, sat quietly, and tried to understand what was happening. She had spent years avoiding the spotlight, living quietly, and suddenly the world seemed to have turned its eyes on her. Outside the store, a small news crew waited. They weren't aggressive, just curious. One reporter approached her gently and asked, "Miss Maria, could we talk to you for a moment? Your music has touched so many people." Maria shook her head softly. "Thank you, but I don't want to be interviewed." She went back inside, hoping things would calm down. But they didn't. Over the next few days, the video reached even more people. A popular music producer tweeted it, calling her a hidden gem in plain sight. A famous pianist commented on the video, praising her expression and control. A university music department wrote a post about her, saying they would love to meet her. Everyone wanted to know her story. Where did she come from? Why was she working in a grocery store instead of playing in concert halls? Slowly, details began to surface. A man who had known Maria years ago recognized her from the video. He sent an email to a news station saying that woman studied piano in Europe. She was one of the most gifted students I ever met. This was the first clue to her past. A retired music teacher named Mr. Collins, who now lived in a nearby town, saw the video and immediately remembered her. He had taught Maria when she was just a teenager. In an interview, he said Maria was extraordinary. She could play by ear, read complex sheet music, and bring emotion to every note. I always believed she'd go far. Reporters began digging deeper. They found records from a prestigious music conservatory overseas, showing that Maria had once been accepted into a top program. Photos from years ago showed her as a young woman, sitting at grand pianos in large rooms filled with sunlight. In those pictures, her expression was the same as it had been at the community center. Calm, focused, full of emotion. So what happened? That's what everyone wanted to know. It took some time, but eventually parts of Maria's story began to come together. She had left her music school early, before finishing her studies. The reason? family tragedy. Her mother had fallen seriously ill, and Maria, being the only child, returned home to take care of her. Her dreams of playing in concert halls had been packed away quietly, just like her old sheet music. After her mother passed away, Maria stayed in her hometown. She needed money, so she took small jobs, first cleaning houses, then working at the grocery store. Life moved on. Years passed, and though the world forgot her music, she never really let go of it. She kept a small keyboard at home, one with a few missing buttons. She played it sometimes, usually late at night, softly so she wouldn't disturb her neighbors. Music had become her private comfort, not something to share with the world, but that one night at the community center changed everything now. Her neighbors looked at her differently. People who had ignored her for years now greeted her warmly. Children waved at her when she walked to work. One elderly man even handed her a single rose, saying, "Thank you for reminding me what real beauty sounds like." Maria appreciated the kindness, but she also felt overwhelmed. She had spent so many years hiding her talent, not because she was ashamed of it, because she believed her time had passed. The idea that the world still wanted to listen to her was both wonderful and frightening. Then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at the grocery store addressed to her. It was handwritten in neat blue ink and tied with a ribbon. Maria opened it during her lunch break. Inside, a little girl named Sophie had written, "Dear Maria, I saw your video. With my mom, I never liked piano before, but when I heard you play, I cried. My mom said it's okay to cry when something is beautiful. I want to be like you. Can you teach me? Love, Sophie, age 8." Maria held the letter close to her heart. It was the first time someone had asked her not just to play, but to share her gift. More letters came, some from children, some from adults who had once loved music but gave it up. They all said the same thing in different words. "You made us feel something." Again, Maria realized she had a choice. She could stay hidden, working her quiet job and playing music in secret, or she could step forward. Not to become a celebrity, but to help others feel what she had felt her whole life. She made a decision. She began teaching music at the community center once a week. At first, just a few students came. Sophie was one of them. Then more joined. Word spread that Maria wasn't just a good pianist. She was an incredible teacher. She didn't just teach notes and timing. She taught feeling. She helped students connect with the music. Even if the piano was broken or the room was noisy, her students grew quickly under her guidance. Some were children with no previous experience. Others were adults returning to music after years. In every lesson, Maria was patient, kind, and full of quiet strength. Even as her fame grew online, Maria stayed humble. She turned down offers to appear on big talk shows. She ignored invitations from talent agencies. She told her students, "I'm not here to be famous. I'm here to help you find your music." But people still watched her video. They still talked about the night she played the broken piano and changed everything. Journalists called her the hidden maestro, and some magazines featured her photo, always showing her sitting at a piano with that same gentle smile. And in her little town, Maria's story became something people passed down. Children would walk by the community center, point to the piano and say, "That's where it happened." Maria didn't need a stage or a spotlight. She only needed music, a willing heart, and a moment of courage. And from that moment, she became more than just the quiet lady at the grocery store. She became someone unforgettable. Maria's quiet life had become something completely new. Ever since the video of her playing the broken piano went viral, people across the country had been talking about her. She had become famous without even trying. She never asked for it, never chased it. It had simply found her, because the beauty of her music couldn't be ignored. But Maria remained the same. She still lived in her small house with the sunflower garden. She still worked part-time at the grocery store, still wore her favorite gray sweater, and walked to the park on Sundays. Even after people started recognizing her on the street, she stayed calm and polite, never showing off. Quietness was not shyness, it was strength. It's a kind of strength that comes from surviving life's hardest moments and still choosing It's kindness, but fame doesn't wait quietly. Every day, more letters arrived at her doorstep. Some were from fans, thanking her for inspiring them. Others were from people in pain, telling her how her music gave them hope during dark times. Some letters came from other countries, written in different languages but carrying the same message: your music touched my heart. At first, Maria didn't know what to do with all the attention. She had spent most of her life trying to stay invisible. But now, her name was everywhere. Music foundations started contacting her. They wanted her to perform in concerts, join music competitions, or become a judge on talent shows. A famous orchestra even invited her to play at their anniversary gala. Big offers came with large payments and fancy hotels. But Maria said no to all of them. She didn't want money or spotlight. She only wanted to teach her small group of students. At the community center, she believed music should be shared, not sold. Her joy came not from applause, but from the spark in a child's eyes when they played their first melody right. But one day, a letter came that made her stop and think. It was from a young girl named Aisha, who lived in a shelter with her mother. The letter read, "Dear Miss Maria, my mom works 2 jobs. We don't have a piano, but I saw your video on my school computer. I want to play like you. I play on my desk with my fingers and pretend it's a piano. Sometimes I close my eyes and hear music in my head. But it would be better if I could learn for real. Can you help me? Love, Aisha." Maria read the letter twice, then again. She remembered being a little girl, dreaming of music, too poor to afford lessons at first. She remembered tapping rhythms on her windowsill when no piano was around. This letter wasn't just another fan note. It was a cry from a child who saw herself in Maria. That night, Maria sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea and thought deeply. Maybe there was a reason the world had noticed her now, after all these years. Maybe the music wasn't just for her anymore. It was a gift to be passed on. She made a decision that changed everything. Maria wrote back to Aisha and told her to meet her at the community center on Saturday. She also made a few calls to local schools and music shops. She asked if anyone had old pianos or keyboards they weren't using. In just a few days, she had gathered 5 working instruments. Some were scratched and dusty, but they still played. She didn't stop there. With the help of some kind people in town, Maria started a small program called Notes of Hope. It was free music classes for children who couldn't afford them. She taught them herself slowly, patiently, with the same care she once gave her own dreams. The first class had only 4 students. Then more joined, then more. Soon, the community center was full of laughter, music, and smiling faces. Children came early just to get extra practice. Some brought their younger siblings. Parents came too. Listen, amazed at how much their kids were learning. One mother said, "I never thought my daughter would play piano, but now she wants to be like Miss Maria." Even though the center was noisy and the instruments were old, Maria didn't mind. To her, it was a little music school built on love. She gave students handwritten sheet music, told them stories about composers, and helped them understand that playing music wasn't about being perfect. It was about feeling. News of the program spread quickly. A local newspaper wrote an article titled "The Woman Who Turned Her Fame into a Gift." Then a national magazine did a feature on her, showing pictures of Maria surrounded by children at the piano. Still, she didn't care about the attention. She cared about the children learning to play music who never had the chance before. But something even bigger was about to happen. One day, Maria received a call from a woman named Diana Jacobs. She was the director of a well-known charity that helped underprivileged children get access to the arts. Diana had seen Maria's story and wanted her to perform at their annual fundraising event in the city. It's not for TV or for judges, Diana promised. Just for good. It's to help children like Aisha. Just one song from you could raise enough money to buy hundreds of instruments. Maria thought for a long time. She didn't want the spotlight, but she also knew this wasn't about her. It was about the children. And she believed in giving when you have the chance to help someone else. So, for the first time in many years, Maria agreed to perform on stage. The event was held in a beautiful theater. It's filled with people who cared about art, children, and hope. Maria wore a simple dress and tied her hair back. She didn't wear makeup or jewelry. She didn't ask for a special introduction. She only asked that the piano be real and well-tuned. When she stepped onto the stage, the lights were soft, and the audience went quiet. No one clapped yet, they just waited. Maria sat down at the grand piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Then she played. It was a piece she had written herself, part lullaby, part memory. The music floated through the air like a gentle breeze, touching every heart in the room. It was sad and hopeful at the same time. It reminded people of things they had lost and dreams they still held close. When she finished, there was silence again. Then the crowd stood up and gave her a standing ovation. But Maria didn't look proud. She looked peaceful. She bowed once, softly, then left the stage. That one performance raised enough money to fund music classes in 10 cities. Instruments were donated, teachers were hired, and hundreds of children got the chance to learn. All because one woman had played a broken piano with love. Maria went back home and continued teaching. She didn't accept interviews or sponsorships. She didn't go on tours. Instead, she stayed in her small town with her garden full of sunflowers. And her heart full of music. The world kept watching, but she kept giving. More letters came. More children joined her classes. Some of her students performed in school concerts, others in church choirs. One girl got a scholarship to study music in college. She cried and hugged Maria, saying, "You changed my life." Maria only smiled and said, "Music changed mine first." Years passed, but Maria's spirit never changed. She became a legend, not because she chased fame, but because she used her gift to lift others. And the piano, once broken and dusty, stood proudly at the community center, played every day by children who now believed in magic. Not the kind of magic with wands or wishes, but the kind of magic that lives in music. It's the kind that turns pain into beauty, silence into song, and a quiet woman into a light for the world. Maria's story had already touched thousands of lives, yet she didn't live like someone famous. Years after that night at the community center, she still walked through the same small-town streets, carried groceries in her own hands, and smiled gently at everyone she met. But wherever she went, people no longer saw her as just Maria. They saw a woman who changed lives with her music, a quiet soul who turned one broken piano into a doorway of dreams for others. Her music program, Notes of Hope, continued growing year by year. What had started with a handful of secondhand keyboards and a few eager children had now become something much bigger. Donated instruments lined the walls of the community center. Local volunteers helped with the classes. Maria, still the heart of it all, taught nearly every day with the same care and patience as she did that very first lesson. Some of her students had grown into young musicians. One boy, Liam, who once struggled with stage fright, now played at school concerts with confidence. A girl named Priya, who had never touched a piano before Maria's class, went on to win a state-level music competition.
Oh.
They all came back to see Maria from time to time, not just to thank her, but because they loved her. To them, she wasn't just a teacher. She was the reason they had found their own voices. The broken piano, the one that started everything, still sat in its special place at the community center. Over the years, people had offered to fix it, repaint it, or even replace it with something newer, but Maria always refused. She believed that the piano's scratches and dents were part of its soul. "It's not perfect," she said once, "but it's honest, like all of us." That old piano became a symbol in the town. People from other cities would visit just to see it. Tourists came to take pictures beside it. Children touched its keys like they were meeting a magical friend. On the wall behind it, a simple wooden plaque was placed with the words, "The day the room fell silent." Though Maria never chased attention, her story reached places even she couldn't imagine. A small publishing house wrote a children's book based on her life. It was called Maria and the Piano That Sang. The illustrations were warm and gentle, just like her. It became popular in schools and libraries, inspiring children everywhere. Then came the documentary. A young filmmaker, who had once been one of her students, asked if he could tell her story in a short film. At first, Maria hesitated. She didn't want lights, cameras, or interviews. But when he told her that the film could help raise money for even more music programs, she agreed. Only on one condition: no acting, no drama. Just truth. The documentary, titled Quiet Strings, was filmed over several weeks. It showed Maria teaching, playing softly at home, and walking through her garden of sunflowers. It also captured her, reading letters from children, her students' laughter, and moments of silence where the music did all the talking. When the film was released online, it didn't just go viral. It made people cry. It reminded viewers of their childhood dreams, of forgotten passions, and of the power of kindness. It won awards not just because of its storytelling, but because of the real person behind it. Maria received letters from all over the world. From elderly people who had once played music but stopped, from teenagers struggling with anxiety, from teachers looking for hope, from musicians who had lost faith in the industry. They all said the same thing: thank you for reminding us what real music is. Despite the growing attention, Maria stayed rooted. She didn't travel for fame or money. She didn't buy a new house or hire an assistant. She still answered every letter by hand, still made tea for her students, and still believed that music was a gift to be shared freely. Then one spring morning, something happened that touched her more deeply than anything else. A large envelope arrived from the National Music Academy. Inside was a letter telling her that she had been selected for a Lifetime Achievement Award for her extraordinary contribution to music education and community healing. The award ceremony would be held in a grand concert hall in the capital city. She was invited to attend, speak, and perform if she wished. Maria looked at the letter for a long time. Then she carefully folded it and placed it on her kitchen table. She didn't smile or frown. She just sat quietly, remembering everything that had brought her here: the dusty piano, the jokes, the silence, the applause. She agreed to attend, but only if her students could come with her, and so, on the day of the ceremony, a small bus, full of excited children, arrived at the grand hall. They wore their best clothes and carried their instruments. Maria sat among them, dressed in her usual simple way, her gray sweater carefully washed and ironed. The audience that night was full of important people, famous musicians, wealthy donors, politicians, and artists. But when Maria walked onto the stage, they didn't see just a humble woman from a small town. They saw someone who had given her whole heart to others. She didn't give a long speech. She simply said, "Music saved me. I tried to pass it on. That's all." Then she sat at the grand piano and played one of the first songs she had taught her students, a simple melody, soft and full of love. When she finished, the audience stood in silence, then clapped and cheered for several minutes. Tears flowed freely. That night, Maria's students also performed. They played with heart and joy, proud to stand beside their teacher. The crowd gave them just as much love as they gave her. It wasn't a night about fame. It was a night about connection, about what music could do for the human soul. Years later, after Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep, the news spread quickly. She had become more than just a teacher or pianist. She had become a symbol of quiet strength. People around the world held candlelight concerts in her memory. Radio stations played her favorite songs. Schools told her story during music class. And her students, all grown up now, shared how she had shaped their lives. The community center placed a new plaque beside the piano, which read, "Maria Thompson, the woman who made silence sing." A music foundation was created in her name, offering scholarships and free music education to children from struggling families. Every year, on the date she played the broken piano for the first time, her town held a small concert, called it Maria's Night. No fancy lights, no judges, just pure music played from the heart. In the end, Maria's life wasn't about how loud her name became, but how deeply her kindness reached into others. She didn't chase glory. She simply gave love through her hands, through her piano, and through the quiet power of believing in people. And so, the woman who was once asked to play a broken piano as a joke ended up fixing broken hearts with her music, forever remembered, forever loved, forever inspiring.